The next thing we're going to look at is the different stages that you will need to go through in application development to bring your product to market. We could call them stages, we could call them phases. These are areas where actions will take place, just in the same way that you would have done this with Unit 17. So, to look at the overview, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different stages. And all of the different application development models, whether we're looking at waterfall, iterative, agile, and so on, these are just different ways of achieving the same thing. You might ask, well, why have different models? Why not just have one model? And that's something that you'll need to answer in M1. You're going to use a different model depending upon the sort of project that you have, the size of it, the experience of the people doing it, how much you know about the project up front, and other factors too. So what we're going to do now is go through each of these different stages one by one to make sure that you understand what they actually are. And don't forget, for P1, you are going to need to choose one of these models, whether it's waterfall, iterative. You pick one and you say, I have selected the waterfall model and I'm now going to describe the different stages. And you'll need to do this in your own words. So for this, in terms of the Bloom's taxonomy, you are showing that you have understanding of one model. All right, so let's have a look at requirements analysis. It's our first phase. What would happen during this phase? First of all, you're going to be gathering information. It's a fact-finding mission. What is it that the client's currently doing? But also, what does the client want? But more importantly, what does the client need? Now, I want a Ferrari, but I probably need something a bit less expensive, a bit more reliable, and something that I can afford to have serviced. So wants and needs are different things. So when you look at what the customer requires, the customer requirements, you'll think about A, what does the customer say that he or she wants, and B, what is it the customer actually needs? It may be, of course, that you decide to go for 1, 2, or 3 options to present to your client. So perhaps you're going to offer the Poundland version, the bare bones version, which will be less expensive. And then you've got a middle of the road version, which has got slightly more features, 1 or 2 more benefits. And then you've got the luxury version, which they might choose to spend more money on. And of course, thinking about the size of the client that you've got is quite important here. But coming back to the task that you have to complete, we're talking about one man who's got one car who takes out 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 students a day, and probably closer to 6 because these are 1-hour lessons. So if you're coming up with a plan that's going to cost £400,000 to complete, and this guy is earning about £40,000 a year, he's unlikely to invest 10 years of his earnings in an app in order to make bookings. So it's worth thinking about who your client actually is and what your client earns. So far, you've thought about what your client wants and you've thought about what your client needs. From there, you will then investigate what's currently in place. You might do this by going and sitting in the back seat and watching how he operates. You might do a questionnaire for him or a questionnaire for his clients, or go and speak to him or speak to his clients. And you might look at what other similar organizations do. So once you've got all that information, you'll then go away and you'll produce a requirement analysis. So the requirement analysis is a fancy way of saying producing a document that says what it is the client wants, what it is the client needs. And then you're going to present that to the client and say, dear Mr. Driving Instructor, I think that what you need is an app that can do this and this and this, and this is how I would go about making it. And this is what it'll cost you, and this is when it'll be ready. Would you please sign on the dotted line? It's not quite as simple as that, but that's the process we're talking about here. Obviously, the client then has to agree to what it is that you want to do, and then he or she will sign up based on the information that you've provided. Now, of course, as is the case in real life, what will happen is you will come up with some ideas, and the client will say, well, actually, I'd rather that it was that colour, or I would rather that that screen wasn't so busy, I'd rather have that over 2 screens, and so on. So there'll be some backwards and forwards with the client in the process. And incidentally, we run this as though you were actually doing this in real life. So you will have to make contact with the client using the right language. You will have to introduce yourself. You will have to send documentation that is spelt properly, that's clear and that looks professional, or else you won't get the gig. So we're looking still at the requirements analysis, and let's delve in a bit deeper and look at the market analysis. What are other people doing who are like this driving instructor? What's your driving school doing? Have a look online, see how appointments are booked with other driving instructors, because you don't need to reinvent the wheel.